We are a blended family.
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 We're a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
And we are a blended family. Hi, we're Doctors Larry and Carol Snap. We're glad to have you with us today.
Good morning, everybody. This is Blended Family Class, Lesson 1 of our 12 classes this new semester. And we're coming to you live from Dreamcitychurch at the Glendale campus. We're in Building 5, room 503. We hope you can join us with one of the next weeks that are coming. And Larry's going to speak to you today on what is a godly marriage. Here's Larry.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. And as it says, this is lesson 1 of 12. So this is a 12-week semester. It's worth 1 college credit hour. Occasionally we'll throw a couple of lessons in together just so we don't run into Thanksgiving. So there's that. All right. Okay, so what we're trying to do right off the bat here is just establish a solid foundation for what a godly marriage is. We'll be talking about how God created man in his image, and that God expects marriage to be one man, one woman, and we have a little flow chart of God's order in marriage. The head of man is Christ, the head of the woman is a man, and the head of Christ is God the Father. That's kind of the summary of what we're going to be talking about. So, in the kingdom, right, as we just said, we have the church as the bride, and sometimes I'll put like a circle around this, that's the Holy Spirit, right? We have Jesus as the Son. So the bride reports to the Son reports to the Father, and that's the way the chain of command goes in the kingdom. Right? We have another class where we're talking about this, like this is the CEO, chairman of the board, CEO, COO. Right? Kind of the same thing. But in marriage, we see it's very similar. We have Christ as the head of the husband, like we just said. Husband is the head of the wife. But there's 3 different submissions here. Right? Like everybody ever says, and the wife shall submit to the husband. And that's all they ever say. That's what the guy's like. But there's a purpose behind the wife submitting to the husband. But you have to have the first 2 before the third one happens. If you're not doing the first 2, the third one's not going to work. Right? Can't have number 3 without the other 2 first. Right? And that's the way it is in the kingdom. Right? There's an order to things in heaven, and there's supposed to be an order to things here on earth in marriage, because that's the way God made it.
Christian Living Radio.
Okay, so this is establishing the foundation for marriage. It's always good to start in the beginning. Back in Genesis, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and every other creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Okay? And And then it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. So the way it worked was God created a human man in his image from the dirt. Took a bunch of mud, breathed into it, and there's Adam. Okay, now some of the important things to realize here is Adam was all there by himself for who knows how long. God told him to name all the animals, and I don't know, there's, thousands of them. He's got to name all of them. So that at least took a few days. Probably could have been a year or two, who knows? No idea. So whatever Adam called it, that's what it was. And then eventually, after he had finished doing that assignment, God said, well, it's not good for man to be alone. So that's when he put Adam to sleep and took a rib and made the woman out of Adam's rib. Right? So it's important to realize he made Adam out of the dirt. But he made the woman out of the man. He didn't take another pile of dirt and make a woman out of it. And then eventually say, let the two be one flesh. Because that would have been a little awkward, I think. If you got an image of God over here that's a male and another image of God over here that's a female, and he says, now be one, there probably would have been some conflict right there, I think. But he made Adam with God's image, and the way I describe this is Adam had all of God's image. And then, just to make it easy to kind of comprehend, it's like, so God is all male, all female, all that stuff is in God. He has all those attributes, right? So just to make it kind of easy to comprehend, it's like, so Adam's got all that in him. And God's like, well, he needs a companion, he needs to help me. I'm going to take like the female part, the essence, not physical parts, but the essence of the female, of my image, out of Adam, and make a woman suitable for him. So after he does that, he brings Eve to Adam, and Adam has to name this creature. So he's, whoa, man.
Oh, man.
So,
Holy moly.
Whoa.
yeah, could have been that.
Could have said, thank you, Jesus.
Whoa, man. So out of the man. Right, so bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, you shall be woe man. Right. So to me, the important part of this whole bit of scripture is the fact that God created us in his image, took part of that, made another creature, but then said, be one. So what he was intending was that his image that he started with, being a complete image, broken up, put back together, that one image would still be a complete image. And that his complete image would then be multiplied. They would have dominion. So this is the purpose of us being here, to have dominion over everything. But the big thing was, he wanted godly offspring, but he wanted his image multiplied. Not just people, his image he wanted multiplied. Right? So, that's basically all this. So, now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. And that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. And it was like, oh yeah, and they were naked. It's like, oh, by the way, right? It's kind of a weird way of, like, I'm just throwing that in there. It's kind of strange, really. But the fact was...
What does that mean exactly?
That they were
Adam
naked.
and Eve were both naked and they felt no shame. Like, you know how the
There was no
Bible,
sin.
there is like parables for everything, right?
Right.
They felt no shame. Is it because it was in the beginning and that's just the way it was? It's like over time.
There was no sin.
Yeah,
Had nothing to feel
they had
guilty or-
nothing.
There was
They-
none.
Got it.
It's the way they were made. And it was just them and God.
Got it.
So there's no sin, no shame, no guilt, no negative anything. And Adam didn't have anything to compare to. Right? So
And
this
didn't
is
have another woman to
this is
choose
like,
from
wow,
either.
this is awesome. Right? But yeah, there was no sin. So there's no reason to feel shame or anything. And it wasn't until they sinned that then they realized, oh hey, we're naked. They had no idea. I mean, this is normal, right? This is the way we were created, and everything was perfect. So it was like 72 degrees, or whatever. And who needs clothes? But that's the way it was in the beginning before Satan came along. So, but I also find it interesting that it's like God is telling them, you leave your mother and your father, but they're the first people. So it's like God was saying, there's going to be in-law issues. When in marriage, the in-laws will be a problem. It's like he's kind of giving them a heads up.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So that's the kind of the foundation. God created man, and then He created woman out of man, and He said, multiply. But what He was meaning was multiply my image over the world, over the planet. And then Satan comes along and messes everything up. So now we are a little more into today. And when it comes to marriage, it's so important that you put your faith and trust in God much more so than your spouse. God will not let you down. Your spouse will.
Because they're human.
It's just a matter of time. And sometimes they do it over and over again. I like to always go back to this thing I saw at Chewy's restaurant. It was over at Cave Creek and close to the church over there, Cactus and Cave Creek.
Okay.
They had all these weird, cartoony looking things all over the ceilings and the walls and everything. But one of my favorites was, if our food doesn't meet your expectations, lower your expectations.
Well, if I have ever.
And, in a way, that's the way marriage is supposed to work. Because, in our flesh, we have all these real high expectations of spouse. Like Dre McGuire, you complete me. Well, if they don't do that, then you get frustrated, you get angry, and it's their fault for not meeting your expectations, and all that kind of stuff. But that's what we're kind of talking about here. You put your faith and trust in God, not your spouse. You expect a lot from God, you expect very little from your spouse, and you'll be hardly ever disappointed. I mean, obviously, God does things in His timing, and it's usually not in our timing. So there's some frustration, and it seems like it's taking forever for this to happen. But expect a lot from God, not so much from your spouse. And then this next thing is our pyramid here. Feel free to take a picture of that if you want. So I was driving along one day and this picture came into my head. Any marriage ministry at all does the triangle with God at the top and the husband and the wife down in the other at the bottom corners. And the whole point of the triangle is as you each individually get closer to God, you get closer together. Right? So, with all the classes that we went through and everything, it just this picture just sort of popped into my head one day as to why things should be in the order that God wants them in. Now, we've been doing marriage counseling quite a bit for probably 5 or 6 years by this time, and we kept seeing people had certain things out of order, especially if they were blended families. Even in a regular, traditional first marriage, people tend to get things out of order sometimes, but it's even more prevalent with the blended family situation. But the most important relationship, and the one that we should spend the most time with, is our vertical or our personal relationship with God. Right? As a Christian, we're supposed to become Christ-like. We're supposed to think like Him, act like Him, speak like Him, be more like Him.
On my Jesus glasses, need to be worn all the time. Instead of answering back and being ugly, what would Jesus say and what would Jesus do? You have to have the Jesus glasses. You have to have them.
Right. So, how you look at the world, if it's not through the Jesus glasses, then you're going to just see things from the world's perspective. So we need to, as Christians, we need to be looking at the world through our Jesus glasses so that we can discern the spirits. Right? So the first and most important is our vertical relationship with God, because it's for eternity. We have the relationship here and then in heaven forever and ever. Right? So we probably should spend some time cultivating that. The second one is the most important horizontal. Anything here on earth is a horizontal relationship, but the most important one is the husband-wife relationship. It is supposed to be a covenant, which is till death do us part. And God, like the flow chart, God has to be first, then the marriage, then your kids and everybody else. So the purpose of the marriage, especially if you have any kids, is to show the kids how to do marriage according to the way God does it.
And we want this to be the last.
Yeah. Even if you've been married before or been in a relationship before,
We want this one to be right.
this marriage is the one that matters as far as we're concerned. The ministry that helped us and the one that we volunteered with, they were very focused on first marriages. Make sure you get the first one right, do the covenant thing till somebody dies, and then if you want to start over again, fine. You did your job, you did your duty, you lived up to the covenant, and you're free to do another one. But what we ended up with most of the time were people that screwed up the first or second one. And now they're on their second or third or fourth one, and they're still messing it up because they got stuff out of order. They don't know what the order is supposed to be.
And I did too. I messed up my first two marriages. And I finally got it right. Finally listened to God.
So
You got it right the first time. You don't get 2 more tries.
yeah, that whole first time charm thing, it's like it doesn't. I don't get that.
Don't even-
Well, that's me and Sean. Sean's had his chance, and I have never been married, so this is my one and done.
Good. Okay, so God is first, spouse is second, then the parent-child relationship. So spouse has to come before the kids.
Even if it's a step parent.
Yeah.
That's where this is.
That's the
Especially-
hard part.
This relationship.
Especially if it's a step-parent.
Yeah.
It's not the hard part as the married couple, but to get your older kids to understand
We understand.
is the hardest part.
I know.
Yeah, and that's, see, I think it's the next class, it's like, what is a blended family?
Yeah.
Right.
A little more.
But that's one of those things we talk about is how difficult it is to get the kids on board.
Yep.
But it's not easy. It's totally not easy. But
Well, it's because
when
for
the
so
marriage
long
is
it's been
good
you and me.
and solid, the kids tend to come along.
And
Eventually.
consistency, which is the hardest. Well, it's not hard. I just never really had it. But the more consistent I am, and they know,
Oh, yeah.
then it gets easier. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It
Yeah,
takes 45
You
years.
think they're not paying attention, but they are.
That's right. They are.
And the older they are, the harder it is.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that, and there's like that 10 to 12-ish. It's like the younger they are, the more they want to,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
But then they
yes.
start getting to that teenage years, it's like, I don't want what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm over here.
Yeah.
I'm not that.
And it's very transparent. As long as it works in their favor,
Oh, sure.
blended is great.
Oh,
But
sure.
when there's a conflict of interest, it's
Right.
wow,
Yeah.
it's talking them out.
When
Oh,
we got
You're not
married,
my dad.
yeah.
You know,
when we got
or
married,
mom.
my youngest was 4 years old, and I had a 15-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter. Larry had never been married before, and he comes in to the family. And that was not easy.
Yeah.
You don't know much of my testimony. I don't know how much
I didn't share
Lisa has
anything.
shared, but my second husband molested all 3 of my kids.
Oh no.
So it took them a long time to even trust somebody, especially my son.
Right.
But, and as we teach the class, we say more of this. Larry didn't come in with a stick because I'm stepdad, that's why. He learned what they liked and would associate, our son liked to play basketball and he liked music, so they'd go to the music school and play guitars and whatever. And he showed them how he loved me, and that's what wins them over,
That's good.
Renee. When they see the love and the guidance and the security that you have, they feel it too.
Yep, you're right.
It takes time, and they'll make it look like they're not even paying attention.
They are.
Believe me, they are.
Yep, you're
They
right.
are.
So, yeah. So one of the things, and part of this that led up to getting this picture was this one here, the parent-child part, number 3. And it just sort of was revealed to me that most of the people that were having problems in the blending situation, a big part of it was because the single parent that's now in a relationship felt like they were a child owner
Yeah, I like that.
and not a steward of God's kids.
I'm actually going to steal that for youth because I'm one of the youth leaders. Like, you know, a lot of the
That's fine.
kids that have
That's
bad
fine. That's what we
parents,
do in
you
the
know what I
class.
mean? And
Yeah.
they're like feeling like they're doomed. I like
Don't-
that.
So-
Your parent is
Don't
only
tell
your
my
steward.
kid what to do, and that's where the
Yeah.
problems
So
come.
that's what screws up the marriage,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't want you messing with my kids. But I thought we were married here. Well, yeah, but don't mess with my kids. So you just put the kids higher than the spouse, and the spouse is like, well, why am I here?
And in our premarital, that's what we teach. When you say I do, you say I do to the whole family. You don't pick and choose the ones you're gonna get along with and the ones you're not. They're all our kids.
Yep.
It's not your kids, my kid, and maybe our kid. They're all our kids to begin with. It
Yep.
has to be that way. It's the only way it's gonna work.
I still kind of get a little don't laugh. A little protective
Well, sure,
over, you know,
that's normal.
so.
That's
And,
normal.
you know, and it does, I think it really does make a difference, you know, if it's a girl or a boy, you know, a daughter or a son, you know, there's some different dynamics that go with that.
It takes
but-
time.
Yeah, this is the goal.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
We get the couple and they're way off. And we have to try to help them get here.
Right.
I mean, obviously we tell them, do this. But it's like, you gotta do it by practicing it.
That's a lot easier to implement and do, honestly, once you decide to get married too. Because I was in conflict the whole time before it was decided. Because you know, your heart knows the right thing to do, but you're like, God, until we decide on forever, there's no distinctive role. You know what I mean?
Right. When
And-
you're hurt, you've been hurt, and you wanna protect yourself
Yeah,
and the kids to make sure that doesn't happen again.
yeah,
Yeah, you're in survival mode, really.
yeah,
Sure.
When you look at, especially in a blended situation, when you look at the kids as all being gifts from God, and they're
Oh.
God's,
even the teenagers.
Yes,
yeah.
especially
Well,
them.
see, he didn't gift. Well, in a blended situation, I guess they could be gifted to you as a teenager.
Yeah.
But you know, they started out as babies, so you know, they started off okay, but then they learned stuff.
They started off okay.
They
But
started off
learned
okay
stuff.
until they turned the corner.
But see, the thing here is, if you, as a married couple, if you can get your head wrapped around the fact that the kids belong to God, and at some point, like Stuart's 18 to 25, you got to give them back. So
Yeah.
that's the thing that is hard for most folks. They never want to give them back. Some do, but most don't. And that's kind of one of those sticky things. Is it's like these are my kids. They're my kids forever, right? Well, they're not really mine. They're God's, and my job is to train them up in the way that they should go, and then I'm supposed to give them back because they have to report to God. And
Do you know where in the Bible verses where it says about you're only the steward? I mean,
don't know
I
that
can look it up.
actually
I just
said that.
was.
We just came up with that as a.
somewhere I have a list of scriptures to back
Yeah.
all
That
this
would
up.
back it. Yeah. No, I just wanted to make a note because I want to use
I don't
it
have
at
it
youth.
off the top of my head, but I have a list somewhere
Okay.
of
Yeah.
scriptures to back all this stuff up.
But at that same point, Larry, when it's
I
adult
think it's
to
that-
adult, when the kids get older
Well,
as
it's that
well.
proper. Train them up in the way they should
That's
go.
right.
Yeah,
Right? That's
And-
our job.
That's
To train
right.
them up in knowing God.
Right.
And then there's another one that says we all have to answer to God. Right?
Right.
I don't answer to God for what my kids do.
Right.
They don't answer to God for what I do. It's a one-to-one. That's why everybody has a vertical, right? Because somewhere we have to answer to God for us, right? So there's that. But the thing, at some point, that parent-child relationship has to become adult to adult. And that's why we don't like 30-year-olds living in our basement. Because they're supposed to answer to God for themselves. But, we've got this thing where we feel like we have to protect our kids, which when they're young, absolutely. But our job is to train them up in the way they should go so that they can be independent, productive adults. And if we inhibit them from doing that, then we're not doing our job. So part of the parent-child thing is to give up the ownership, be a good steward, and at some point give them back to God. And that's generally where we see a blended family having major issues. The other one is the extended family, which is co-workers, other, siblings, grandparents, exes. Too many times an ex at least tries to manage your relationship, especially when they want to co-parent.
This is Christian Living Radio.
This marriage, this relationship is the one that matters. This is the one that counts. This is the one that is the most important. This one needs to manage, this husband-wife relationship needs to manage all the other ones. In the house, outside the house, this manages all that. Too many times we see the external having too much impact on the inside the house.
so that's the next priority thing.
Or get too busy in your own other stuff that you forget to come.
Right. That's why there's things like praying together daily, date night once a week, those kind of things. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. So we got God first, spouse next, child after the spouse, everybody else after whatever's inside the house.
But that's mainly for the spouses, the ex-spouses, to put healthy boundaries for those ex-spouses.
Yeah.
So
Gotta have
they-
boundaries.
at me like I have no zipper, and I'm like thinking to myself, I asked the kids, I'm like, why do you come to me? Your father's right there. Why aren't you asking your dad? Well, I don't know. Did you ask your dad? Yeah, he said to ask you. Well, what did your dad say?
That's when you give
Well,
a
I didn't
hard
want to
no.
ask him because you're nicer than him. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. So
I inherited her 3.
mm.
I didn't bring any in. We didn't have any. So that made things a little more simple, right? I didn't have mine to compete with and all that kind of stuff. I just had to figure out how to get along with hers.
Mm.
And 2 teenagers and a 4-year-old. The 4-year-old was fairly easy, but yeah, like she said, I was not coming in as a boss. I never had really been a boss. Didn't know how to be one really. I knew how to get along, and so that was my job. And looking back on it, we saw Ephesians 5:33. Husbands love your wife, wives respect your husband, blah blah blah. That's kind of what we were doing. I was loving her, and she was respecting me. Whenever the kids would come to her, say, "Hey, I need this," or "We need to do that. Can I do this?" She would always keep me in the loop.
I would tell them I needed to check with Larry.
Yeah. So she was respecting me as the head of the household, even though I didn't act like it. I was in the loop.
We didn't know it was right, but that's what God wanted.
Yeah, we found out much later on that that's what we were doing. So, I mean...
What if you give him that power, though, and you're like, you better ask Derek, and before you can even say Derek, he's saying, look at him saying, no. My fiance and I have talked to you guys before in the big church. He's coming in with no kids, and I have 4 daughters. But only 3 are at home. But my 15-year-old and him, like this. But I'll do that because God has given me vision completely on how to act to make this work. So I feel like I'm perfect, kind of. Not in so many. Like it's hard for me, but I'm like, we got to ask Derek, and inside I'm on fire, going, oh, this doesn't feel right, but I know it's what I got to do. So she'll be asking something, but I think the frustration is before he's even fully hearing her, right? I mean, to get respect, you have to give it. Like, at least hear her before you're like, hard no. You know what I mean? Because then she's like, because I don't want her to turn a corner, right? But, so I'll give it, and then I'm like, and I don't ever say nothing because you can't in front of the kids, and she'll leave. I'll be like, really? What was that? And then we go out, and so right now the hardest thing for us, if you have any advice, let me know, is, because he don't have any kids, with me, I feel like I've been groomed to kind of know that they're going to be little turds sometimes because it's genetically in their nature as teenagers. But he thinks I'm making an excuse. Like, you can't keep using that teenager card. I'm like, but you need to see it sometimes. It's not just you need to be a good kid all the time, because they're not going to be.
Well, he needs to be in these kind of classes to hear other men talk about it. Because it's not going to matter what you say.
Right.
He needs to hear it from another Christian man.
Right.
That this is normal for people to feel this way.
Right.
And this is why they feel this way.
Especially teenagers, it's the way we talk about it, it's their job to rebel.
And he always uses the disrespect. She needs to respect me. And mind you, they have a great relationship. I've been with him for 4 years since she was not even a teenager, and their relationship was awesome. And so now it's taking its turn. But the respect, but what I want him to see is you saying she's disrespectful, you're not alone in that. She doesn't waver on the way she talks. You know what I mean? It's not just geared towards him. It's to me and you know what I mean? But at the same time, if it's his role as the man of the house to reel that in, and I'm going to have to sit second seat, I'm okay with that too. But it's so confusing. And I feel like he takes that power to a whole nother level. Like, I'm like, have to just walk away because I know I got to give him control. But I'm like, God, he didn't even hear her out, and that was a good plea. He could have said, well, not this time. Or you know what I mean? I'm like, God.
Communication topic. Offline.
Right.
Right? When it's not in the middle of something.
Right.
Is you talk about these things privately, behind the closed door at some point so that you can be in agreement later.
Yeah.
The meeting,
When the
Larry.
situation happens, you know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
The meeting,
And
Larry.
you're in agreement on that.
The meeting.
Well,
Set the
there's the
rules.
meeting, the
Get them to
forgiveness
sign it.
meeting. There's a,
Get
get
them to-
everybody together. Hey, we're not perfect. We've messed things up, here and there, and we just want to let you know that we would like for you to forgive us for all the stuff we've messed up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
It kind
Oh,
of
we did one of them.
clears the table.
Yeah, that's good.
Opens doors to get rid of generational curses.
Yep.
But
those
at
kind
the
of
same
things.
time, you and your future husband need to, ahead of time, talk about what are the rules going to be, what are the consequences going to be when things don't line up with the way you want them to be in your home. Your home, your rules. But the both of you have to deliver it to them at the same
Yeah.
time, so they don't think, well, Mom said, but
Yeah.
he said, no, you both be together.
Yeah.
But the trick is, write them out, what they are, especially with teenagers, and get them to sign it. Because once they do something and cross the line and you try to execute the consequences, they go, I didn't know that was a rule.
Yeah.
Well, you do because you signed the paper.
Yeah.
Because we know the kids have tried that. But you have
Every which
to
way.
make the consequences age appropriate.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'm gonna take your car away for 3 months. I mean, the kid maybe has a job after school or something.
Yeah.
Now, that's ridiculous, because if he's not driving, somebody's gotta drive him.
Yep.
So does that mean you have to get off your work to take them places? So 3 months is totally unrealistic. So those things need to be done ahead of time, discussed. So if they do something wrong, they know what the consequence is going to be. Not you have to worry, oh my God, is he gonna get after us doing this or that? You already have agreed what the consequence is going
Yep.
to be. So you both need to have that safety net, knowing how it's gonna be handled.
And there's no confusion. If I'm not around, he knows what to
Right.
Yeah.
and
And
then
he
say.
knows you approve because
Yep.
you guys have decided on it.
Yeah. It's the agreement about those kind of things that really gives you the power and authority to be the parents.
Yep.
And sometimes
That's good.
there's things that happen that you don't even foresee happening.
Yeah.
And so like Sean did something that really made me mad one time, and we were out in public, and we're somewhere, and I love you, but I'm not happy with you. We will talk about this later. And we left.
I said that last night.
Like I was so mad, but like all the kids were with us. We were in public.
Did it make you feel better to let him know right in that
Yes.
instant? Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
I was like, you need to know that I don't approve of what you just did, and we will talk about this later, but I'm going to stay calm in this situation.
That is so important
Yeah.
to deal with stuff calmly.
Yes.
Deal with the anger offline so that when you get the opportunity to talk about it later, you're not angry.
Right.
Yeah.
Because anger does not lead to the righteousness of God. Right? So,
It
okay,
doesn't
so
say be quick to anger.
only work on your own vertical. You can't fix anyone else's. One of those golden nuggets we got right off the bat in our own counseling was marriage is spiritual warfare, and your spouse is not your enemy, but also that God is not in the spouse changing business. He's in the you changing business.
That's what I had to do.
Well, me too. I had to be a lot different. The next one is give up your right to be offended. And like you said, that everybody, it's like people are looking for reasons to be offended.
Yes.
I'm mad for you.
So, but Christ on the cross, who had every right to be offended because he didn't do anything wrong, and he was being killed for speaking truth,
Yeah.
said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, in my little twisted mind, that's like the best way to see somebody as an idiot because they're so stupid, but they don't know what they're doing.
Ugh.
So, Father, forgive them. Yeah, they're the idiot, but they don't know what they're doing, so I forgive them because they're stupid.
Can you say that prayer out loud? I'm just kidding.
Sure.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Especially if you're by yourself.
Yes. That was good. That was good.
It's just you and God.
That's right.
And God does have a sense of humor.
He does.
Do you think he gets mad when you pray, when you're praying to him, and you're praying a good prayer, but then you make jokes in your prayer? Is that okay?
I think
A lot of
I
them-
think
I
God
think
has a
so.
sense
We
of
all
humor.
do it.
Well, yeah, because honestly, a prayer is you're having a conversation. with
Because he
God.
gets mad. Well, Derek and I will be praying, and we're trying to abstain until marriage, and I'll be like, "And God, thank you for everything," and I'll be like, "And God, please help Derek stay away from me," because we're both fighting it, right? But he's like, he gets madder than a hornet. You can't be messing around. I'm like, God made me. He knows my heart, and we just said our serious prayer, and I'm really praying that you stay away from me.
God is very able to read between the lines.
Yes, you're right.
He gets your heart,
Yes.
right? Now, and God is not one to play whack-a-mole. You know, every little time somebody raises their head up in sin, he's not ready to whack them on the head.
Yes.
Right? He's on his throne. You sin, you fall down. He wants to pick you up and hug on you. He's not up there with a fly swatter or a sledgehammer. You know.
Yes.
Every little thing, boom. That's what grace is.
That's right.
When we were doing a marriage and relationship seminar just a week ago at one of the other churches, and at the last one we said we were going to do the forgiveness one, and we do that in lesson 10. Here we bring in balloons, and you write the husbands or the boyfriends on one side, the girls on another, things that you have to forgive. A person maybe did something, and you then holding a grudge, you got to get rid of it, so you got to write it down on this balloon, or say something that had happened to you that you have to forgive. And I said, now some of you may have too much to write on your side of the balloon, and that's fine. Just put a ... because God knows what is on your heart and what
Right.
you need to forgive. There was this one guy that kept making big dots all over his balloon. And he said, do you think he'll know? I think he'll know.
That's right.
The balloon looked like a leopard. Okay, so we have a whole class on just this part. You know,
That's awesome.
part of forgiveness, right? Is don't pick up the offense. If you do not pick up the offense, you have nothing to do. But if you pick it up, you own it, and now you got to deal with it and go through the whole forgiveness thing and that kind of thing. And you know, even Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane was like, Father, let this cup pass from me, that cup of sin that he was going to have to drink, right? But not my will, your will. So his humanity was kind of coming out at that point. But yeah, he said, you know, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that should be one of those first things that comes into our mind when somebody does something stupid. Sometimes I'll talk about pre-forgiveness along those lines. It's like so many people end up working with other people that it's like they just know that person's going to do something stupid that ticks me off. But if you know that ahead of time, you can kind of forgive them ahead of time, knowing they're going to do whatever it is they do, and then you don't even bother picking that up.
That's good.
All right, pray together daily. This is the glue that keeps a marriage together. It creates intimacy in 3 ways. It creates intimacy with the person, or in this case God, the one you're praying to, the ones you're praying with, which is your spouse, and the ones you're praying for, which should be your spouse, and your kids, family members, you know, everybody else. it helps you develop that intimacy with everybody, but especially it helps your vertical and it helps your horizontal with your spouse and your kids and all that. And they see the peace that is generated in your spirit, so they're a lot less stressed out. Okay? Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification. See, that would not be corrupt. If it was good and for necessary edification, it would not be corrupt, right? But when I see this one, that it may impart grace to the hearers. So my first visual little thing here is like the kid at Toys R Us, when the kid's throwing the tantrum in the next aisle, and the mom or dad is yelling and screaming at the kid to shut up and stop doing that. That doesn't give you much grace in what you're hearing, right? So, but we should be doing what is necessary to edify one another. Instead of looking for reasons to be critical and being offended by stuff, what is it that we can see about our spouse to edify? I love the way you do this. So you handled that pretty well. I don't like what you did. We'll talk about it later. I love you, but I don't like what you did. That's great. It's kind of the way that should work. And then when when that anger kind of subsides, then you can talk about it rationally and actually resolve something. But when you try to resolve a conflict, when you're upset,
It just turns into yelling. And
puts more gas on the fire.
No.
It's definitely corrupt.
So that wraps up this week.
And do a closing prayer.
Well, I just want to mention, okay, this is out on Facebook.
Yeah,
The audio will be on iHeartRadio and Spotify at some point.
yeah.
And a shout out to ChristianLivingRadio.com who does that for us.
Join the best positive Christian lifestyle movement on the air at Christian Living Radio.